Hi, my name is Mike, and if you subscribe to my channel or watch any of the other videos that I typically post, you'll see that I normally do how-to videos on things like car repair and computer repair. Today's video is going to be a little bit different, and it's a project that kind of fell into my lap. I was asked to help build a Bitcoin mining rig. This is something I'd never done before, but I did a little research on it, and I started putting together some parts. So today I'm going to be showing you the chassis that we chose, and we're going to be looking at some of the upgrades that I did to this chassis, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how to set this up, and then I'm going to pop the video cards in, fire it up, and hopefully have successfully completed a Bitcoin mining rig for the first time. Thanks, and enjoy the video. Our system is based on a VTRETU case. I picked this up on Amazon for around $750. I did a little research on cases prior to selecting this one. There was a really nice looking Rosewell case that was a 4U server rack mountable case, but what I saw from reading the reviews on that is that it could overheat frequently because of the density of how tightly the video cards are packed into this case, and also it was out of stock everywhere, so the Rosewell case wasn't really an option. I also saw some really nice cases by a company called Octominer, and those seemed to be really hard to get. Like, they had a minimum order quantity of 5 and, you know, all these hoops you had to jump through, so that case was out as well. So we picked this VTRETU case. Never heard of the brand before. There was only a couple reviews on Amazon. I found one other video on YouTube where I sort of went back and forth with the guy who recorded that video. He gave me some information. I liked the look of the case from his video, and so we went with this model. So it's pretty heavy metal, and we're just going to set the top off to the side for now. I'd like to kind of show you the inside. We'll actually start over here at the left side of my table. It comes with this double-sided sheet of instructions here, and if you watch this video to the end, I will include still photos of both sides of the set of instructions. They're not super great. They didn't even tell how to enter the BIOS, really, which is, press the delete key. And there's some English inconsistencies on here. One of the thing I thought was kind of funny was where it says, how many GeForce, yada, dear, our rig supports, like, dear. So in any case, your typical Chinese-made import product where the language is not very well proofread prior to shipping the hardware. So also over here, this is the original M-SATA card that came in here. It was a 128 gigabyte card, and I upgraded that with a 256 gigabyte card. I'll show you that here in a minute. I actually wrote a post-it note with some of the issues that I found with this hardware. Some of them were covered in the other gentleman's video, things like the number 8 power connector over here. For some reason, they didn't plug that in. Also, speaking of power, the power cord that comes with it is what I would call is a very weak cord. It's this little guy right here, which is probably like 18 gauge cord, and I picked up a much thicker 14 gauge just because of the amount of power that's going to be going into this machine. I don't think the stock power cord is sufficiently rated for that amount of power. It comes with some screws. The screws are all messed up, mentioned in the other guy's video as well. What I found was that it looked like the screws to hold the power supply in were improperly installed. The screws that should hold the case together were used to hold the power supply in. Again, pretty poor quality control is where I'm going at with this. Hopefully the hardware itself is solid, but the assembly process of this VTRETU company, not super great. They do include a VGA to HDMI adapter because the motherboard only has a VGA port. I also upgraded the memory on the system. It comes with 4 gigabytes. I tried to upgrade it to 16. It wouldn't post with 16, so I had to roll that back to 8 gigabytes. I don't feel like 4 gigabytes is a viable amount in 2022. Nothing should have that little amount. You're also going to want to pick up a pack of additional screws because, like I said, they're pretty screwy, the way this thing was assembled. And even again, just some of the basic quality control on here. Caution, do not bullcock this exhaust air vent. Come on, guys. Do better. But the things that I do like are the motherboard itself. which you can see in there before I put the video cards in. It's a nice long board, and it allows the cards to be spaced out so that they're not too densely packed and generating too much heat. It also has 8 fans, 4 on the front and 4 on the back. There is a fan control speed knob here. The case was dented over here when we received this item. I took these 2 out, the knob and the button, and hammered it straight from the inside. Shipping damage, I guess. It's pretty loud, and you'll hear that when I turn it on. It's pretty loud even with the fan speed all the way down, and when you crank it up, it is a beast. So, plenty of extra power cords for our video cards once we get those installed. I want to show you a little bit more about the motherboard before I put the cards in. You can see here's that mSATA card, which is basically your hard drive. Over there is the memory slot, which accommodates up to 8 gigabytes. Underneath that cooling fan, I'm going to turn the light on here. Underneath that cooling fan is a socket 1155 socketed dual-core Pentium processor. I believe any 1155 processor would be compatible with this board, which means that if you wanted to upgrade the processor, you could pick any of a variety of, for example, Intel i5 or i7 processors that are compatible with socket 1155. I'm not upgrading the processor in this particular case, just the memory and the storage, but I believe if you wanted to upgrade the processor, you could do that as well. The processor is not soldered to the motherboard. Further towards the back, you can see the ports, and this has USB 3.0, VGA, and Ethernet, and I'll include a picture of the diagram on the back of the ports as well at the end of this video. The Ethernet port is only a 100 megabit port, which I guess is fast enough for our purposes here. I would have preferred to see gigabit, since basically everything has a gigabit port now. Also, the fact that it's VGA is pretty odd. They include the adapter to HDMI. I do still have a lot of VGA monitors kicking around here, so that wasn't a problem for me. But if you have a newer monitor that only has HDMI, you might need to use that adapter. I also am somewhat displeased that they didn't extend the ports all the way to the back of the case. It's really hard to reach. You kind of have to come around to the back, and then if you want to plug those cords in, you got to reach your hands through this opening here. So, not the best design. Would have been nice if they'd extended the ports fully to the back of the case, or mounted the motherboard, and a little bit easier, maybe mount the motherboard all the way to the back so that you can add a normal back plane to this for those ports. Maybe not super critical in a Bitcoin miner, but just in terms of someone who builds computers all the time, I would have preferred to see it, laid out that the ports were easier to reach. One last thing, up here near the front, there is a SATA port. So if you wanted to attach a standard hard drive or an optical drive for any reason, you could do that. So what I did when I set this up was I first tested it with the original factory hard drive, and it is in half English, half Chinese installed copy of Windows 10 Enterprise Edition with no license. The other person touched on that on their review as well. I'll include a few screenshots of that at the end of this video. It's really weird, half English, half Chinese. Easiest thing for me to do was just take a Windows 10 emergency recovery flash drive, boot off that. Once I'd put the new hard drive in, just, format the hard drive and reinstall the operating system. That's usually the route that I take on any new system anyway, rather than try to tinker with that, really bizarre install that this shipped with. So to install the video cards, we're going to need to remove this bar up here, which has my post-it note on there. Did I cover all of the problems I found with it? The screw's the wrong size, the screw's loose on the PSU, the dent, I made some notes of some issues that I found as I was going along. I don't want to knock this machine too badly. I do really like it, and I hope that it'll work well for our purposes. I see a lot of places sell Bitcoin miners that are the open air style case, but we, for our particular application, needed something that was enclosed. And I also picked up a couple of these rolling carts just to put underneath of it so that it's not sitting straight on the floor. And I'll include a link to these in the description, just something to give it wheels so I can kind of move it around a little bit as I'm working on it. One other thing I noticed on the case that makes me kind of think the quality control isn't very good is this. If you see along the back, You see there's screws mounted along the back here, and this one over here where there should be a screw, there's like a stud in there for it, but it doesn't line up. I don't know how well it's going to show up on the video, but there's a stud in there that doesn't line up with the screw hole, so you can't actually put a screw in that hole. Just to turn the machine on for a moment, I want you to hear how loud it is before I install the cards. Green light on the power supply up here. You can tell it's plugged in. Power switch on the back. Flip that. You can see over here on my monitor it's starting to power up. So this is with the fan spinning at the lowest speed. I'm going to go ahead and turn this knob here. You'll see my post-it notes start to blow. I'm really pleased with the airflow of this case. And I do believe it will do a good job keeping our cards cool. Build issues aside, I like that it has 8 fans. And you know, when most of the comparable cases only had 4, I think that this aesthetically is a better setup than some of the 4-fan systems. The graphics cards we're going to be putting into this system are over here in this older machine. We're going to be using a total of 8 of these NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 cards. This old machine is in pretty sad shape. You know, as you can probably see in the video, it's got some rust and some dents, and it's pretty banged up. So we're going to be cleaning off these 8 cards and transplanting them into the new machine, where we're hoping that they'll run a lot better. Okay, so we've now removed 4 of the cards from the previous case and moved them over into our new VTRETU rig. You can see that the cards are installed, they're lit up. Their fans spun initially when I first powered the system on, and then they spun back down. I assume that's because they are self-monitoring their own temperature and they don't need to spin their own fans. Since they're not really doing anything right now, they're not getting too hot. I assumed that when I powered this on, Windows would automatically download the drivers for these. It appears that that is not the case. However, they are all detected in Device Manager. You can see these 4, they're just showing up with the basic display adapter right now in Device Manager. And over here in GPU-Z, you'll see that all 4 of them do show up there. So it appears I've got a little research to do and locate the correct driver for these cards. And once I install the correct driver, hopefully they will all show up properly in Device Manager and GPU-Z. Just wanted to show one other thing I added here. Is just a external USB extension cord here for the receiver for the wireless keyboard and mouse, because it's just too hard to reach those USB ports on the back of the machine otherwise. At least now I can plug things in and out with this extension. So let me research those drivers and I'll pick the video back up again in a few minutes. The drivers were actually a little easier than I thought. I just went through Device Manager and did update driver, and Windows automatically located the correct driver and installed it. And you'll see I now have 4 NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 6GB cards showing up in Device Manager. Likewise over here in GPU-Z, the 4 cards do also show up here. I'm going to pause the video again while I swap the other 4 cards over, and we'll pick it back up once that's done. And here we have a final shot of the system with all 8 cards installed and operating. You'll see that over here on the desktop. All 8 cards detected in Device Manager. And also over here in GPU-Z, which gives us some additional information about each card. And the last tool which I installed on the desktop is the free HW monitor or hardware monitor tool. And this is good because it gives us some internal measurements on the temperatures of the cards. Right now they're not too hot because they're not doing anything. Obviously that would change once we begin mining. So for example, you can see here's one 24.7, Obviously with 8 cards, you've got a lot of numbers to look at. Here's another one, GPU 30 degrees. So again, temp's pretty low right now because it's not doing anything. The last steps which I would take on this machine are to close up the case, move it into its final position, which is going to be a server room here at the facility where I'm located, and install and configure the remote access software so that the owner of this machine is able to remotely configure it and add the mining software of their choice. I hope this video has been helpful to you. It was pretty interesting building my first mining rig and learning a little bit more about different types of cases and what would work well for our particular application. Also setting up the hardware, doing some upgrades on it. I just didn't feel right, sending it out into the field, so to speak, with such a limited amount of memory and storage. I hope that the upgrades I've done will enable it to perform better. If this video has been helpful to you, please like and subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of different computer repair videos and car repair videos, and it really helps me out a lot. Thank you, have a great day, and stay safe out there.